bound by contract. How an arranged marriage became a love worth fighting for. Prologue. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. I was in my study, reviewing contracts for the Henderson merger, when my father's assistant knocked softly on the door. She didn't wait for permission to enter. She never did when carrying something from him. "Miss Whitmore," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "Your father asked me to deliver this personally." The cream-colored envelope was heavy, expensive, the kind of paper that announced importance before you even broke the seal. My name was written across the front in my father's sharp, angular handwriting, Isabelle. Not Bella. Not Izzy. The formality told me everything. "Thank you, Margaret," I said, setting down my pen. She hesitated at the door, her expression sympathetic in a way that made my stomach tighten. Then she left, closing the door with a soft click that sounded too much like finality. I stared at the envelope for a full minute before opening it. 28 years of being Charles Whitmore's daughter had taught me to read warning signs. And this, hand-delivered, sealed, formal, was an air raid siren. Inside was a single sheet of letterhead and a photograph. The letter was brief. "Isabelle, I'm calling in our agreement. You have until Sunday to make arrangements. The wedding will be held at the estate on the 15th of next month. Everything has been finalized. This is not a discussion." "Father." My hands didn't shake. That's what surprised me most. I read the words 3 times, each pass making them more real and somehow less believable. Then I looked at the photograph. The man was handsome in that carefully constructed way wealthy men often are, tailored suit, strong jawline, dark hair styled with precision. His eyes were gray, or maybe blue. It was hard to tell in the professional lighting. He stood in front of what looked like a corporate building, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. I flipped the photo over. Written on the back in my father's hand, Adrian Castellano. 34, CEO, Castellano Industries. The name hit me like cold water. Castellano Industries, the shipping empire that controlled half the ports on the East Coast. Old money, older grudges, and a reputation for ruthlessness that made my father look warm by comparison. I set the photo down carefully as if it might detonate. 3 years ago, when my mother died and left me her shares in Whitmore Holdings, my father had made me a deal. He would let me work, let me build my own division, let me prove I was more than just the daughter waiting for a suitable marriage. In exchange, when the time came, when he needed a strategic alliance, I would do my duty. I'd agreed. God help me, I'd agreed, because at 25 I'd been desperate to escape the suffocating roles of charity galas and society brunches. I wanted to build something real, something mine. And I had. For 3 years, I'd turned the acquisitions division into the most profitable arm of Whitmore Holdings. I'd negotiated deals that made hardened executives blink. I'd earned respect in boardrooms, where my last name had once been the only thing that mattered. But now the bill had come due. I walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cool glass. 43 floors below, the city moved with the indifferent rhythm of a Tuesday afternoon. Traffic, pedestrians, lives unfolding without contracts or obligations written in expensive ink. My phone buzzed. A text from my father, dinner tonight, 7 p.m. Non-negotiable. Of course it was. I thought about calling my brother, Thomas, but he'd chosen his own cage years ago, married the daughter of a senator, produced 2 photogenic children, played golf every Thursday. He'd stopped fighting by the time he was 26. I couldn't bear to hear him tell me to do the same. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and typed Adrian Castellano into the search bar. The results were extensive. Business profiles, interviews, society page photographs. He'd taken over Castellano Industries when his father died 6 years ago and had expanded it aggressively. Acquisitions, hostile takeovers, a reputation for being brilliant and completely without sentiment. There was one personal detail buried in a Forbes profile from 2 years ago. Castellano remains unmarried, stating in a rare personal comment that he has no interest in the social theater of relationships. I almost laughed. We were a perfect match, then. 2 people who wanted nothing to do with each other, being forced together by men who treated children like chess pieces. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of emails I couldn't focus on and calls I let go to voicemail. At 6:30, I changed into the navy dress my father preferred, conservative, elegant, forgettable, and drove to the estate. The house where I'd grown up had always felt more like a museum than a home. Tonight, it felt like a mausoleum. My father was in his study, standing by the fireplace with a scotch in his hand. He didn't look up when I entered. "Isabelle," he said. "Sit." I remained standing. "I want to discuss this." "There's nothing to discuss." He finally met my eyes, and I saw no warmth there. Only calculation. Castellano needs legitimacy in society circles. We need access to his shipping routes for the European expansion. It's a simple exchange. I'm not an asset to be traded. You became one the moment you signed our agreement. He took a slow sip of scotch. "You've had 3 years of freedom, Isabelle. You've proven yourself capable. Now prove yourself useful." The words landed like stones. Capable. Useful. As if those were different measurements of the same worthlessness. "What if I refuse?" I asked quietly. He smiled, and it was the cruelest expression I'd ever seen on his face. "Then I dissolve the acquisitions division. Your team, all 23 people who depend on those positions, will be let go. Your projects will be distributed to other departments, and you will return to the role you were always meant for, decorative and silent." My throat tightened. "You wouldn't." "Try me." For a long moment, we stared at each other across the expensive carpet, across years of unspoken resentment and carefully managed distance. I thought of Sarah, my assistant, who had a daughter starting college in the fall. Of Marcus, who just bought his first house. Of every person who'd worked beside me, believing we were building something that mattered. "When do I meet him?" I asked, hating how steady my voice sounded. "Saturday. Lunch at the club. I expect you to be gracious." I turned toward the door. "Isabelle." My father's voice stopped me. "This is how our world works. You know that. Stop fighting it." I left without answering. In my car, I sat in the circular driveway and stared at the house's lit windows. Somewhere inside, my father was probably pouring another scotch, satisfied that he'd won. Again, I pulled out my phone and looked at the photograph once more. Adrian Castellano, the man I would marry in 5 weeks. The stranger who would become my husband because our fathers had decided shipping routes mattered more than choice. His expression in the photo was carefully blank, but something about his eyes made me pause. They weren't cold, exactly. They were guarded. Like he'd learned a long time ago not to let anything real show through. I knew that look. I saw it in my own mirror every morning. As I started the car, one thought crystallized with perfect, bitter clarity. My father might control the arrangement, but he couldn't control what happened after I said I do. If I had to marry Adrian Castellano, fine. But I'd be damned if I'd be useful. I'd be damned if I'd be quiet. And I'd be damned if I'd let either of our fathers turn this marriage into just another merger they could manage. The wedding was 5 weeks away. I had 5 weeks to figure out how to survive it. The engine hummed to life, and I pulled away from the house, leaving its cold lights behind. Ahead, the city spread out like a promise, or a warning. In the rearview mirror, my father's estate grew smaller, but the weight of the envelope in my purse remained exactly the same. Heavy, expensive, inescapable. I drove toward my apartment, toward the last few weeks of the life I'd built, and tried not to think about how easily it could all be dismantled with a single word from a man who'd never once asked what I wanted. But even as I drove, even as I felt the trap closing, something else flickered to life inside me. It wasn't hope. I was too pragmatic for that. It was something sharper, more dangerous. Defiance. My father wanted a useful daughter. Adrian Castellano was getting a wife he didn't want. Fine. Let them both learn what happened when you backed Isabelle Whitmore into a corner. Let them learn what happened when you mistook compliance for surrender. The light ahead turned yellow. I pressed the accelerator and made it through just as it turned red. 5 weeks. The countdown had begun. Chapter 1. First Contact. Saturday arrived with unseasonable rain. I stood in front of my closet at 11 in the morning, staring at rows of perfectly pressed dresses like they were enemy combatants. The country club lunch was in an hour, and I still hadn't decided what armor to wear. My phone buzzed on the dresser. A text from my father, "Don't be late." I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled out a slate gray dress, elegant but severe, with a neckline that said professional more than bride-to-be. If I had to play this role, I'd do it on my own terms. When I arrived at the club, the valet gave me a sympathetic smile. Word traveled fast in circles this small. By now, everyone knew about the arrangement. I could already imagine the whispers over champagne brunches. Poor Isabelle Whitmore, finally being put to use. I handed him my keys without comment. My father was waiting in the main dining room, seated at his usual corner table, the one with a view of the golf course and enough distance from other tables to ensure privacy. He'd chosen the battlefield carefully. But he wasn't alone. Adrian Castellano sat across from him, and for the first time, the photograph hadn't lied. He was handsome, dark hair, sharp features, a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. But what the photograph hadn't captured was the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was set like he was preparing for a fight. He looked exactly how I felt. My father stood as I approached. "Isabelle, you're 3 minutes late." "Traffic," I lied smoothly. Adrian rose as well, and when our eyes met, something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. Like he'd been expecting someone different and was rapidly recalculating. "Miss Whitmore," he said, extending his hand. His grip was firm but not aggressive. His palm was warm. I released his hand quickly. "Mr. Castellano." "Please," he said, his voice low and even. "Adrian." My father gestured to the empty chair. "Sit, Isabelle. We have much to discuss." I sat, smoothing my dress, buying time to study the man across from me. Up close, Adrian's eyes were definitely gray, the color of winter sky before snow. They were also guarded in a way I recognized immediately. This wasn't a man who trusted easily. Good. I didn't either. A waiter appeared with menus, but my father waved him off. "We'll have the usual, Thomas, and bring a bottle of the Bordeaux." I hated that he'd already ordered for me. I hated that he knew I wouldn't contradict him in public. I hated every carefully constructed layer of this performance. So, my father began, settling back in his chair like a king addressing his court. "I trust you've both reviewed the terms?" "I have," Adrian said. His voice was controlled, but there was an edge beneath it. I remained silent. My father's eyes narrowed slightly. "Isabelle." "I've read them," I said finally. "Though reviewed implies I had any input." The table went quiet. Across from me, Adrian's expression didn't change, but I caught the slightest twitch at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile. More like interest. My father's voice dropped to that dangerous register he used in boardrooms. "We agreed." "You agreed," I interrupted, meeting his eyes. I complied. "There's a difference." For a heartbeat, I thought he might actually lose his composure. His fingers tightened around his water glass, knuckles going white. But then Adrian spoke. "She's right." My father turned to him, incredulous. "Excuse me." Adrian leaned forward slightly, his gaze steady. "Miss Whitmore is correct. Neither of us chose this arrangement. Pretending otherwise is insulting to everyone at this table." The silence that followed was electric. I stared at Adrian, trying to reconcile this moment with everything I thought I knew. Men like him, men like my father, didn't acknowledge inconvenient truths. They buried them under contracts and social niceties. My father recovered quickly. "Adrian, I understand this is unconventional, but—" "It's not unconventional," Adrian said quietly. "It's transactional. Let's at least be honest about what this is." Something in my chest loosened. Just slightly. The waiter returned with wine, pouring it with the careful precision of someone who'd learned to be invisible around tense conversations. When he left, my father raised his glass. "To new alliances," he said, his smile tight. Adrian lifted his glass but didn't drink. I did the same. "If we're being honest," I said, surprising myself, "I'd like to know what you're getting out of this, Mr. Castellano." "Adrian," he corrected again. "Adrian." The name felt strange in my mouth. Too personal for a stranger. Too formal for a future husband. He considered me for a moment, those gray eyes measuring. "Your father's social connections. Access to circles that wouldn't typically welcome someone like me." "Someone like you?" "New money," he said simply. "My grandfather was a dock worker. My father built the company from nothing. To people in your world, that makes us unrefined." There was no bitterness in his voice, just fact. But I heard the weight beneath it. "And what does my father get?" I asked, even though I already knew. Shipping routes, Adrian said. Preferential rates. Access to European ports that Whitmore Holdings needs for expansion. He turned to my father. Did I miss anything? My father's jaw tightened. You're oversimplifying. Am I? Adrian's tone was mild, but there was steel underneath. I took a sip of wine watching them. This was interesting. Adrian wasn't deferential. He wasn't trying to win my father's approval. He was treating this exactly like what it was, a business deal. Maybe that made it worse. Or maybe, just maybe, it made it survivable. And what do I get? I asked quietly. Both men looked at me. I'm sorry, my father said. You get shipping routes, I said to him. Adrian gets social legitimacy. What exactly do I get from this arrangement? My father's expression darkened. Isabelle. A fair question, Adrian interrupted. He looked at me directly. What do you want? The question caught me off guard. No one had asked me that. Not once in the 3 years since I'd made my devil's bargain with my father. Not once in the week since the envelope arrived. I started, then stopped. What did I want? Freedom was impossible. Escape was off the table. So what was left? Autonomy, I said finally. I want to keep my work, my division, my team. I want this marriage to be exactly what it is, a business arrangement, and nothing more. Adrian didn't hesitate. Done. My father sputtered. You can't just. Why not? Adrian asked, still looking at me. She's right. This is business. If she wants to maintain her career, I have no objection. In fact, I prefer a wife who has her own interests. That's not how these things work, my father insisted. Then maybe it's time they worked differently, Adrian said. For the first time since the envelope arrived, I felt something other than dread. It wasn't hope. I wasn't naive enough for that. But it was possibility. The food arrived, and conversation shifted to safer topics. The wedding plans, the guest list, the reception at my father's estate, all things that had apparently been decided without consulting either of us. I pushed salmon around my plate, only half listening. Across from me, Adrian did the same with his steak. We were both going through motions, playing parts in a script we hadn't written. When my father excused himself to take a call, Adrian and I were left alone for the first time. The silence stretched between us, not quite comfortable but not hostile either. You didn't know, I said finally, about the lunch. You looked surprised when I arrived. Adrian set down his fork carefully. My father told me about the arrangement 2 hours before he died. Heart attack, very sudden. I found the contracts in his office a week later, already signed. He paused. Your father called me 3 months ago to finalize things. I thought I had more time to figure it out. Figure what out? How to get out of it? He met my eyes. But I couldn't. The company needs this deal. We've expanded too fast, and without those European routes, we'll lose ground to competitors. I have 8,000 employees depending on decisions I make. I understood that. I understood it completely. I have 23, I said quietly. In my division, my father made it very clear what happens to them if I refuse. Adrian nodded slowly. Hostages. Exactly. We sat with that for a moment. 2 people trapped by the same mechanism, just different scales. I meant what I said, Adrian said. About your work. I won't interfere. I won't expect. He hesitated. This doesn't have to be a real marriage. Not in any way that matters. You say that now, I said. But our fathers will expect heirs eventually. His expression hardened. Our fathers don't get to expect anything beyond what's in the contracts. And there's nothing in there about children. I almost smiled. Almost. My father returned, looking irritated by whatever call he'd taken. Everything settled? He asked, as if Adrian and I had been discussing flower arrangements instead of the terms of our survival. Yes, Adrian said, standing. Miss Whitmore and I have come to an understanding. I stood as well. We have. My father looked between us, suspicious. But he couldn't argue with compliance, even when he didn't trust it. Good, he said. The wedding is 4 weeks from tomorrow. Margaret will coordinate with your assistant, Isabelle, for dress fittings and such. Adrian, my secretary, will send you the final guest list. We were being dismissed. Adrian extended his hand to me again. I'll see you at the engagement party next week. Engagement party? I repeated, looking at my father. Tuesday evening, my father said. Just immediate family and close friends. 50 people, maybe 60. Of course. Another performance. Another test. I shook Adrian's hand. Tuesday then. As I walked to the valet, I felt Adrian's eyes on my back. When I glanced over my shoulder, he was standing in the club's entrance, hands in his pockets, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not quite an enemy. Not quite an ally. Just another person caught in the same trap, trying to find room to breathe. The valet brought my car, and I slipped into the driver's seat, grateful for the privacy. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. The lunch had been a minefield, and somehow I'd made it through without detonating. More than that, I'd found something unexpected. Adrian Castellano wasn't what I'd expected. He was calculating, yes. Guarded, definitely. But he'd also called out my father's manipulation. He'd asked what I wanted. He'd offered terms that felt almost fair. Maybe I could survive this after all. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Adrian. I got your number from your father's assistant. I meant what I said about your work. If you need anything in writing before the wedding, let me know. I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed back, I'll think about it. Thank you. His response was immediate. Don't thank me. This benefits both of us. That's how business works. Right. Business. I could do business. I pulled out of the parking lot and headed toward my apartment, my mind already racing ahead to Tuesday's engagement party, to the wedding in 4 weeks, to the strange new reality taking shape around me. Somewhere behind me, my father was probably calling his lawyers, making sure every detail was locked down. And somewhere else, Adrian was probably doing the same. But for the first time since the envelope arrived, I didn't feel entirely powerless. I had leverage. Not much, but some. And in the world we both came from, leverage was everything. The rain had stopped by the time I reached home. I parked in my building's garage and sat in the silence, letting the day settle around me. 4 weeks until the wedding. 4 weeks to figure out how to turn a prison into something I could survive. 4 weeks to learn who Adrian Castellano really was beneath the careful control. I grabbed my purse and headed inside, already composing a list in my head. Things I needed, things I wanted, lines I wouldn't cross. If this was going to be a business arrangement, then I'd negotiate like any other deal. And if Adrian meant what he said about autonomy, then maybe, just maybe, we could both walk away from this with something more than regret. The elevator doors closed, and I watched the numbers climb. For weeks. Let the negotiations begin. Chapter 2. The engagement party. Tuesday came faster than I wanted. I spent Monday buried in work, approving contracts and reviewing acquisition targets, pretending the engagement party wasn't looming like a guillotine. My assistant, Sarah, knocked on my office door at 3 with a garment bag. Your father's secretary sent this over, she said carefully. For tonight. I didn't need to open it to know what was inside. My father had opinions about everything, including what his daughter should wear when performing for society. Thank you, Sarah. She hesitated at the door. Bella, if you need anything. I'm fine, I said, softer than I intended. Really? She didn't believe me, but she left anyway. At 6, I stood in my bedroom staring at the dress. Champagne silk, designer label, perfectly tailored to my measurements. Beautiful and utterly impersonal. The kind of dress that said expensive asset without saying anything about the woman wearing it. I put it on anyway. By 7, I was walking into my father's estate for the second time in a week. The circular driveway was already crowded with luxury cars. Valets in crisp uniforms moved with practiced efficiency. Through the tall windows, I could see guests mingling with champagne glasses, their laughter carrying into the cool evening air. 50 people, my father had said. It looked like 70. I took a breath and walked inside. The foyer was transformed, flowers everywhere, candles, a string quartet playing softly in the corner. My father had spared no expense on this performance. Isabelle! My Aunt Caroline swept toward me in a cloud of perfume and pearls. Darling, you look absolutely radiant. And where is your handsome fiancé? Fiancé. The word tasted wrong. I'm not sure, I said. We arrived separately. Her smile tightened slightly. Of course. Well, you simply must introduce me when he arrives. I've heard such things about the Castellanos. I could imagine what things she'd heard. Caroline thrived on gossip like plants thrived on sunlight. Excuse me, I said, spotting the bar across the room. I made it 3 steps before being intercepted by old family friends, business associates, people who'd known me since I was a child and were now appraising me like a stock they were considering purchasing. Their congratulations felt like condolences. I was accepting my second glass of champagne when I felt someone watching me. Adrian stood near the entrance, scanning the room with the expression of a man calculating exits. He wore a dark suit that made him look even more severe than at the club. When his eyes found mine across the crowd, something shifted in his posture. Relief, maybe, or just recognition of a fellow prisoner. He moved through the crowd toward me, and I watched people's reactions as he passed. Curiosity, assessment. The whispers started immediately. The women noticed his looks first. The men noticed his posture, the way he carried himself like someone who'd fought for every inch of ground and wasn't about to give it back. Miss Whitmore, he said when he reached me. We're engaged now, I said. You should probably call me Isabelle. Isabelle. He tried it out, and I tried not to notice how my name sounded different in his voice. Lower. More careful. You look like I'm dressed for auction, I suggested. The corner of his mouth twitched. I was going to say elegant. Liar. This time he did smile, brief but genuine. Fair enough. My father materialized beside us with the timing of a shark sensing blood in the water. Adrian. Wonderful to see you. I trust you've been made comfortable. Very, Adrian said, his tone perfectly neutral. Excellent, excellent. Now we should make the rounds. Let me introduce you properly. Actually, I interrupted. I thought Adrian and I might have a moment first. Alone. My father's expression hardened. Isabelle, we have guests. Who will still be here in 10 minutes. I finished. I looked at Adrian. The garden. He caught on immediately. Good idea. We left my father standing in the middle of his carefully orchestrated party, his displeasure radiating like heat. I led Adrian through the French doors onto the terrace and down the stone steps into the garden. The party noise faded behind us, replaced by the sound of a fountain and the rustle of wind through perfectly manicured hedges. Fairy lights were strung through the trees, my father's touch, making even nature perform on command. Thank you, Adrian said quietly. For what? The rescue. I was about to be paraded around like a prize bull. I almost laughed. That's exactly what this is. For both of us. We walked in silence for a moment, following the path deeper into the garden. Away from the lights, away from the watching eyes. I did some research, Adrian said. On you. I stopped walking. Of course you did. 3 years at Whitmore Holdings, and you've increased acquisition revenue by 42%. You closed the Meridian deal that everyone said was impossible. You turned a department your father was planning to dissolve into the company's most profitable division. He paused. Impressive. You sound surprised. I am, he admitted. Your father talked about you like you were a liability he was managing. But the numbers tell a different story. Something in my chest tightened. He's good at making people feel like liabilities. Adrian turned to face me fully. I researched him too. The way he operates. The patterns. His voice dropped. Isabelle, this arrangement, your father structured it so he maintains control even after we're married. The contracts give him veto power over any major decisions I make regarding the shipping routes for the first 5 years. I stared at him. What? It's buried in the subsidiary clauses. Easy to miss, unless you're looking for it. His jaw tightened. He's not just marrying you off. He's using this to control my company. The fairy lights suddenly felt too bright, too artificial. And you signed anyway? I didn't have a choice. Without this deal, Castellano Industries has no clear path to European expansion. My competitors would crush us within 2 years. He met my eyes. But I don't like being controlled. Join the club, I said bitterly. So we have a problem, Adrian continued. Your father thinks he's pulling all the strings. He thinks once we're married, we'll both fall in line. He usually gets what he wants. Then we need to make sure he doesn't. Not this time. I studied him in the dim light. What are you proposing? An alliance. A real one. Adrian's voice was quiet but intense. We're both stuck in this marriage. Fine. But it doesn't mean we have to be stuck under his control. We work together, we find leverage, we renegotiate the terms. You can't renegotiate a marriage contract. No, he agreed. But we can make ourselves indispensable. Both of us. If he needs this alliance as much as I think he does, then we have power. We just need to figure out how to use it. It was dangerous, what he was suggesting. Going against my father never ended well. I had 20 years of evidence to prove it, but I also had 3 years of building something real, something mine, only to watch it be used as a hostage. What did you have in mind? I asked. Before Adrian could answer, footsteps crunched on the gravel path. We both turned to see my brother Thomas approaching, his expression carefully neutral. There you are, he said. Father's getting impatient. You two need to make an appearance. We were just discussing the wedding timeline, I said smoothly. Thomas gave me a look that said he knew exactly what we were discussing, and it wasn't timelines. I'm sure. Come on, before he sends a search party. As we walked back toward the house, Thomas fell into step beside me, letting Adrian move slightly ahead. Be careful, Bella, he murmured, too low for Adrian to hear. Of what? Of thinking you can win against him. Father always wins. You gave up, I said. That's not the same as him winning. Thomas flinched, but didn't argue. We emerged back into the party, and immediately I felt the shift. Every eye turned toward us. The future bride and groom, finally together, properly displayed. My father raised his glass. Everyone, if I could have your attention. The room fell quiet. Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate this wonderful union between our families. Isabelle and Adrian represent everything we've built. Tradition meeting innovation, legacy meeting ambition. He smiled at the crowd. To the happy couple! To the happy couple! Everyone echoed, raising their glasses. Adrian took my hand. His palm was warm, his grip solid. For the cameras, I told myself. For the performance. But when I looked at him, his expression was complicated. Not quite resigned, not quite defiant. Something in between. Smile, he murmured. We're supposed to be in love. We're supposed to be a lot of things. I replied, but I smiled anyway. The rest of the evening blurred into a parade of introductions and congratulations. Adrian's hand stayed at the small of my back as we navigated the crowd. A gesture that looked affectionate but felt more like tactical support. We were a team of 2 in a room full of people who wanted something from us. Around 9, I excused myself to the bathroom, desperate for a moment alone. I locked the door and leaned against the sink, staring at my reflection. The woman in the mirror looked composed, elegant, perfectly appropriate. She looked nothing like how I felt inside. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, East Library. 5 minutes. Come alone. Adrian. I waited exactly 5 minutes, then slipped out of the bathroom and down the hallway. The East Library was rarely used. My father preferred his study. I found Adrian standing by the window, his tie loosened, looking more human than he had all night. We don't have much time, he said when I entered. But I needed to say this without an audience. Say what? He turned to face me. I meant what I said in the garden. About working together. But I need to know if you're serious. Serious about what? About fighting back. His eyes were intense in the dim light. Your father has built his entire strategy around the assumption that we'll both comply. That you'll be the dutiful daughter, and I'll be grateful for the social access. If we do something unexpected, if we actually become partners in this, it changes everything. Or it makes everything worse, I said. Maybe. He stepped closer. But right now, we're both powerless separately. Together, we might have a chance. I thought about my division, about Sarah and Marcus and the 21 other people depending on me. I thought about the life I'd built in 3 years and how easily it could be erased. I thought about my father's face when Adrian had challenged him at lunch. What's your plan? I asked. I don't have one yet. Not a complete one. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. But I know we need information. Leverage. Something he wants more than he wants control. Good luck finding that. Control is oxygen to him. Then we make him need something else more. Adrian's voice was firm. Your father isn't invincible, Isabelle. Men like him have weaknesses. We just need to find them. There was something magnetic about his certainty. Something that made me want to believe him, even when logic said it was impossible. This is insane, I said. Probably. If we fail, he'll destroy both of us. Yes. And you still think it's worth trying? Adrian looked at me for a long moment. I spent 6 years building my company from what my father left me. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life being controlled by someone else's father. So yes, it's worth trying. I thought about the envelope, the letter, the photograph, the casual way my father had informed me my life was no longer my own. Okay, I said. I'm in. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Relief, maybe, or respect. Partners. He extended his hand. I took it. Partners. His grip was firm, and this time when our hands touched, it felt different. Not romantic. We weren't naive enough for that. But solid. Real. Like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone in this anymore. A knock on the door made us both step back quickly. My father's voice came through. Isabelle? Are you in there? Coming, I called, shooting Adrian a look. He nodded, straightening his tie. We were back in performance mode. I opened the door to find my father looking between us with suspicion. What are you two doing? Discussing honeymoon options, Adrian said smoothly. Isabelle was showing me the travel books you keep in here. My father's eyes narrowed, but he couldn't argue with the logic. I see. Well, we're about to cut the cake. You're needed. We followed him back to the party, where an elaborate 3-tier engagement cake waited. More cameras, more smiles, more performance. Adrian and I cut the first slice together, his hand over mine on the knife. For the photographs, we fed each other small bites of cake. His fingers brushed my lips. I tasted buttercream and something else, conspiracy maybe. Or hope. The crowd applauded. My father beamed. And across the room, I caught Thomas watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. Warning maybe. Or envy. The party finally wound down around 11. As guests departed with air, kisses, and promises to see us at the wedding, Adrian and I stood side by side in the foyer, playing our parts until the last car pulled away. When we were finally alone, or as alone as we could be with servers still cleaning up, Adrian turned to me. I'll call you tomorrow, he said quietly. We need to start planning. Planning what exactly? How to survive this with our souls intact. He glanced toward where my father was speaking with the caterer. And how to make sure he regrets treating us like chess pieces. Before I could respond, he took my hand and raised it to his lips. A formal gesture, appropriate for the setting. But his eyes held mine, and in them I saw something that matched what I felt burning in my own chest. Defiance. Good night, Isabelle. Good night, Adrian. He left, and I watched his car pull away into the night, carrying with it the strangest feeling. For the first time since the envelope arrived, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I felt like I was learning to swim. My father appeared at my elbow. Well, that went better than expected. Did it? I asked. Adrian seems amenable. Appropriate. He studied my face. You two seem to be getting along. We're making the best of it, I said carefully. Good. That's all I ask. He patted my shoulder with something that might have been affection in another man. You're doing the right thing, Isabelle. You'll see. I didn't answer. As I drove home that night, my phone buzzed. Another text from Adrian. 3 weeks until the wedding. That's 3 weeks to figure out our next move. Don't waste them. I smiled despite myself. 3 weeks. Time to stop being a chess piece and start playing the game. I pulled into my parking garage and sat in the quiet car, my mind already racing. My father thought he'd won. He thought this was over, settled, secured. He had no idea the war was just beginning. And this time, he was facing 2 opponents instead of 1. I grabbed my phone and typed back, tomorrow. My office. We plan. His response was immediate. See you at 9. I got out of the car and headed to the elevator, my steps lighter than they'd been in days. The engagement party was over. The real game was about to begin. Chapter 3. Strategy and Secrets. Adrian arrived at my office at exactly 9 o'clock. I'd come in early, telling Sarah I needed time to prepare for a difficult negotiation. It wasn't a lie. This was the most important negotiation of my life, just not the kind she was imagining. When he walked through my door, he looked different than he had at the engagement party. Less polished, more focused. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves like he was ready for actual work instead of performance. "Coffee," I offered, gesturing to the French press on my desk. "Please." I poured 2 cups while he surveyed my office. It was smaller than his, probably. I'd never seen his, but it was mine. Every book on the shelf, every deal memo on the wall, every carefully chosen detail represented something I'd built without my father's name attached. "Nice," Adrian said, accepting the coffee. "I can see why you're fighting for this. It's not much compared to—" "It's yours," he interrupted. "That makes it everything." I understood then that he really did get it. The need to build something that couldn't be taken away, even when you knew it could be. He set his cup down and pulled out a tablet. "I spent last night going through everything again. The marriage contract, the business agreements, all the subsidiary clauses." He swiped through several documents. "Your father is thorough. Every possible angle is covered. That sounds like bad news." "It is. But it's also information." He pulled up a specific section, highlighting it. "Look at this clause. Any changes to the European shipping routes require approval from both Castellano Industries and Whitmore Holdings. That's standard. But here," he swiped to another page, "it specifies that if either party attempts to dissolve the marriage within the first 5 years, all agreements become void and both companies forfeit their initial investments." I leaned closer, reading the fine print. "That's millions of dollars." "Exactly. Your father built a financial prison. If we divorce, both our companies take catastrophic losses. He's ensuring we stay together no matter what." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "So we're stuck?" "Not necessarily." Adrian set down the tablet. "Think about it. This clause gives us power too. Your father needs this marriage to work as much as we do. If either of us threatens to walk away, he loses everything he's invested. That's leverage. He'd never believe we'd actually do it. The financial damage would hurt him too," Adrian finished. "Maybe not as much, but enough. And men like your father don't like losing, even a little." I sat back in my chair, thinking. "You're talking about mutually assured destruction. I'm talking about making sure he knows we have the detonator." Adrian's eyes were intense. "Right now, he thinks he controls everything. But if we make it clear we're willing to blow it all up together, then suddenly he has to negotiate. That's insane. You said that yesterday." "It's still true." Adrian smiled slightly. "Maybe. But do you have a better idea?" I didn't. That was the problem. My phone buzzed. A text from my father, board meeting at 3. "Need you there." I showed it to Adrian. "He's keeping tabs." "Of course he is. He wants to make sure you're staying in line." Adrian checked his own phone. "I have a logistics meeting at 11. We should probably both maintain appearances. Business as usual. While we plot rebellion in secret." Exactly. There was something almost exhilarating about it. Dangerous, reckless, probably doomed, but exhilarating. "We need more information," I said, my mind already working. "About his business, his vulnerabilities. We can't threaten mutually assured destruction unless we know exactly what we're destroying." "Agreed. I have someone who can help with that." I raised an eyebrow. "Someone. Corporate investigator. Discreet, expensive, very good at finding things people want hidden." He paused. "I used her when I was evaluating the marriage contract. She's the one who found the buried clauses. Can we trust her?" "As much as we can trust anyone." Adrian's expression was serious. "But Isabelle, if we do this, if we start digging into your father's business, there's no going back. Once we open that door, everything changes." I thought about the envelope, the photograph, my father's face when he told me there was nothing to discuss. "Everything already changed," I said. "I'm just catching up." Adrian nodded slowly. "I'll contact her today. It'll take time to compile a full report, maybe a week. We don't have much time. 2.5 weeks until the wedding. Then we work fast." He stood, collecting his tablet. "In the meantime, we need to be visible together. Dinner, maybe. Somewhere public." "Why?" "Because engaged couples have dinner together. And because the more normal we seem, the less your father will suspect we're planning anything." It made sense. Horrible, practical sense. "Friday," I suggested. There's a new restaurant downtown. Very visible, very social. Perfect. I'll make a reservation. He paused at the door. Isabelle, I know this is a lot, and I know trusting me is a risk. But I need you to know, I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this because I refuse to live the rest of my life as someone's pawn. I know, I said quietly. That's why I'm doing it too. After he left, I sat in the silence of my office, staring at the coffee cups on my desk. 2 cups, 2 people, 1 desperate plan. Sarah knocked and entered with a stack of files. These are the proposals for the Carson acquisition. You wanted to review them before. She stopped, noticing the second cup. Oh, did you have a meeting? Adrian stopped by, I said casually. Wedding planning. Her expression softened in a way that made my chest tight. She thought this was romantic. She thought I was building a future with someone I'd chosen. That's sweet, she said. It's good that you two are making time for each other, even with everything else going on. I forced a smile. We're trying. She left, and I turned to the acquisition files, trying to focus on work that felt real and concrete. But my mind kept drifting back to Adrian, to buried clauses and corporate investigators, to the look in his eyes when he'd said there's no going back. The board meeting at 3 was exactly what I expected. My father holding court, me taking notes, everyone else nodding along with whatever he said. Afterward, he called me into his office. I heard Adrian visited you this morning, he said, settling into his leather chair. My stomach tightened. Of course he'd heard. He had eyes everywhere. We were discussing honeymoon plans, I said, echoing Adrian's excuse from the engagement party. I'm glad you two are spending time together. His tone was approving. It's important to present a united front. We're working on it. He studied me for a moment, and I kept my expression neutral. Years of practice had taught me how to hide what I was feeling from him. The wedding will be perfect, he said finally. I've insured it. You'll see, this arrangement will benefit everyone. Everyone except me and Adrian, I said before I could stop myself. His eyes hardened. You're being dramatic. In 5 years, you'll thank me for this. Will I? Isabelle. His voice took on that warning tone. Don't make this difficult. You agreed to the terms. Now honor them. I stood. I've never broken an agreement with you, Father. I won't start now. It was the truth. Just not the whole truth. As I left his office, I felt his eyes on my back, assessing, calculating. He was always 3 steps ahead, always anticipating. But maybe, just maybe, he wasn't anticipating this. Friday evening, I met Adrian at Lumiere, the new French restaurant that had a 6-month waiting list unless you had the right last name. We had a table by the window, maximum visibility, exactly as planned. Adrian was already there when I arrived, standing when the host led me to the table. You look beautiful, he said, and it sounded rehearsed until I saw his eyes. There was something there that wasn't performance. Thank you, I said, sitting down. You clean up well yourself. He smiled, a real one this time. My investigator got back to me this afternoon. I glanced around. The nearest tables were far enough away, and the ambient noise provided cover, but still. Here. Where else? We're engaged. We're having dinner. Nothing suspicious about that. He opened his menu. She found something interesting. Your father's European expansion isn't just about new markets. He's trying to outmaneuver a hostile takeover attempt. I stared at him. What? A consortium of investors has been quietly buying up Whitmore holding stock for the past 8 months. They're 3% away from having enough to force a board vote. He met my eyes over the menu. Your father needs the European revenue to prove the company's growth trajectory. Without it, the stock price drops and the takeover succeeds. My mind raced. He never mentioned. Of course not. He controls information like he controls everything else. Adrian set down his menu. But here's the thing, Isabelle. If this marriage falls apart, he loses the European expansion. And if he loses that, he loses the company. The waiter appeared, and we ordered mechanically, barely noticing what we asked for. When he left, I leaned forward. You're saying he's more desperate than we realized. I'm saying we have more power than we thought. Adrian's voice was low, urgent. He can't afford for this to fail, which means he needs us more than we need him. But the financial penalties would hurt us. but they'd destroy him. Adrian sat back as the waiter returned with wine. We waited while he poured, keeping our expressions neutral, playing the role of a happy couple on a date. When we were alone again, I said, "So what do we do with this information?" "We use it carefully. We don't show our hand too soon." Adrian took a sip of wine. "But we make sure he knows that we know we have options. That we're not just going along blindly. He'll get suspicious. Let him. Suspicion isn't proof." Adrian's eyes gleamed with something that looked like anticipation. "Besides, engaged couples negotiate all the time. Prenups, living arrangements, career decisions. We're just negotiating the terms of our cooperation." The food arrived, and for the next hour, we ate and talked and played our parts. To anyone watching, we looked like exactly what we were supposed to be, a successful young couple planning their future together. But beneath the surface, we were building something else. An alliance, a strategy, a way out of the trap that didn't involve giving up everything we'd worked for. "Tell me about your company," I said at one point. "How you built it." Adrian's expression shifted, becoming more animated than I'd seen before. "My father left me a small shipping operation. 3 boats, 1 warehouse, more debt than assets. Everyone said to sell, take what I could get, move on. But I saw potential. In 3 boats. In the routes. In the relationships he'd built with dock workers and port authorities. In the reputation for reliability." He leaned forward, passionate now. "Big shipping companies are efficient but impersonal. I built something different. Personal service, flexible routes, drivers who actually care about the cargo. It took 5 years of 18-hour days and maxed-out credit lines, but it worked. And now I have 43 ships, warehouses in 15 ports, and contracts with some of the biggest manufacturers in the country." Pride flickered across his face. "I built that. Not my father's money. Not his connections. Me. I understood that pride. That need to prove something was yours, earned, deserved. So when my father came calling with this arrangement," Adrian continued, his voice hardening, "when he offered me European routes in exchange for marrying his daughter, it felt like everything I'd built was being reduced to a transaction." "Because it was," I said quietly. "Because it was," he agreed. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what we'd both lost settling between us. "We're going to make this work," I said finally. "Not the marriage, that's a formality. But this." I gestured between us. "This partnership, this plan. We're going to find a way to take back control." Adrian raised his wine glass. "To taking back control." I clinked mine against his. "And to making our fathers regret treating us like bargaining chips." His smile was sharp. "I'll drink to that." As we left the restaurant, Adrian's hand found the small of my back again, that same gesture from the engagement party. Protective, possessive even. But this time, I realized it wasn't just for show. We were actually starting to function as a team. "I'll walk you to your car," he said. "I'm parked 2 blocks away." "Then I'll walk 2 blocks." The night air was cool, the street quiet except for the distant sound of traffic. We walked in comfortable silence, and I found myself acutely aware of his presence beside me. Not romantic. I wasn't naive enough to confuse alliance with attraction, but solid. Real. At my car, he paused. "Next week, we should meet again. Review what else the investigator finds. Make a plan for how to approach your father." Agreed. I unlocked the car, then turned back. "Adrian, thank you. For this. For not just accepting it all. You would have done the same eventually," he said. "You're a fighter, Isabelle. I saw that at the club lunch. You just needed someone to fight beside you instead of against you." The words settled somewhere in my chest, warm and unexpected. "Good night," I said. "Good night." I drove home with my mind spinning, not with anxiety this time, but with possibility. We had information. We had leverage. We had each other, in whatever strange configuration this partnership was becoming. My father thought he'd planned for everything. But he hadn't planned for this. He hadn't planned for us to actually work together. When I got home, I found a folder slipped under my apartment door. No note, just a plain manila envelope. Inside were copies of documents, stock purchases, board meeting minutes, financial projections that showed exactly how precarious my father's position really was. Adrian's investigator had been thorough. I spread the documents across my dining room table and began to read, making notes, building a picture of everything my father had at stake. Every vulnerability, every pressure point. By midnight, I had a clear understanding of just how much power we actually held. The wedding was 2 weeks away. 2 weeks to finalize our strategy. 2 weeks to make sure that when I walked down that aisle, I wasn't walking toward a cage. I was walking toward the beginning of something else entirely. My phone buzzed. Another text from Adrian. Got the documents? Yes, I typed back. This changes everything. That's what I'm counting on. Sleep well, partner. I smiled at the word. Partner. Not wife. Not pawn. Not asset. Partner. I could work with that. I could survive with that. And maybe, just maybe, I could even win with that. I closed the folder and headed to bed, my mind already racing toward the next move, the next meeting, the next carefully calculated step in a game my father didn't even know we were playing. 2 weeks. Let the countdown continue. But this time, we were the ones counting. Chapter 4, the first move. The investigator's full report arrived 3 days later. I was in a meeting when Sarah brought it in, a thick envelope marked personal and confidential. I waited until everyone left before opening it, my hand steadier than I expected. Inside were 73 pages of everything my father didn't want anyone to know. The hostile takeover attempt was worse than Adrian had initially described. The consortium wasn't just buying stock. They were courting board members, promising better returns, leveraging every misstep my father had made in the last 5 years. They had momentum, money, and a legitimate grievance. My father's autocratic management style had cost the company lucrative deals. But there was more. Buried in the appendix were details about offshore accounts, questionable consulting fees paid to shell companies, and a pattern of financial decisions that skirted the edge of legality. Nothing definitively criminal, but enough to raise serious questions if it ever came to light. My father had built his empire on control and secrecy, and now both were liabilities. I photographed every page and sent them to Adrian via encrypted message. His response came within minutes, my office. Now. I told Sarah I had an appointment and drove across town to Castellano Industries. The building was newer than Whitmore Holdings, all glass and steel and aggressive modernity. A physical manifestation of everything Adrian had built from nothing. His assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Diana, led me straight to his office without preamble. Adrian was standing at his window, hands in his pockets, staring out at the city. "Did you read all of it?" he asked without turning. "Every page. Then you saw the offshore accounts." "I did." I set my bag down. "Adrian, if this gets out..." "It won't." He finally turned to face me. "Not unless we want it to. That's the point. The point is blackmail. The point is leverage." He crossed to his desk and pulled up a document on his screen. "I spoke with my attorney this morning. Hypothetically, of course. If someone were to discover financial irregularities in a public company, they'd have a legal obligation to report them to the board. But we're not on the board. No. But you're his daughter, and I'm about to be his son-in-law. We have, let's call it, a vested interest in the company's integrity." His smile was cold, and a responsibility to ensure proper governance. I understood what he was suggesting. "You want to threaten to expose him. I want to make sure he understands the new terms of our arrangement." Adrian's voice was firm. "He gets his European expansion. We get our autonomy. He stops treating us like assets he can manage, or we start asking uncomfortable questions about his business practices." It was elegant. Ruthless, but elegant. "He'll never forgive us," I said quietly. "Good. I don't want his forgiveness. I want his respect." Adrian met my eyes. "And I want him to know that we're not the pawns he thinks we are." My phone buzzed. A text from my father. "Dinner tonight. The house. Both of you. 7 p.m. I showed it to Adrian. "He's summoning us." Perfect timing. Adrian straightened his tie. "Let's show him what a united front actually looks like." We arrived separately but within minutes of each other. My father's estate looked exactly as it always did. Imposing, perfect, cold. Adrian met me in the driveway, and we walked to the door together. "Ready," he murmured. "No. But let's do it anyway." Margaret opened the door, her expression carefully neutral. "Your father is in the dining room." He's asked that you join him immediately. The dining room was set for 3. My father sat at the head of the table, a glass of wine already in hand. He didn't stand when we entered. "Punctual," he said. "Good. Sit." Adrian held my chair before taking his own seat. A small gesture, but I saw my father notice it. "I've called you both here to discuss the final arrangements," my father began. "The wedding is 9 days away. Everything is proceeding according to plan." "Is it?" Adrian asked mildly. My father's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me." I said, "Is it?" Adrian leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. "Because it seems to me that there are several unresolved issues. Such as the veto clause, for one. The one that gives you unilateral control over my shipping routes for 5 years." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "That clause," my father said carefully, "is essential to protecting Whitmore Holdings' interests in the European expansion. Or it's a way to control my company while pretending this is a partnership." Adrian's voice remained pleasant, but there was steel underneath. "I've had my attorneys review the contract. That clause is unprecedented and frankly insulting." My father set down his wine glass with a sharp click. "You signed the agreement. Under duress. And with incomplete information." Adrian pulled out his phone and began scrolling. "For instance, I wasn't told about the hostile takeover attempt against Whitmore Holdings. Or the fact that you need this European expansion to survive it." The silence was deafening. My father's face had gone rigid. "Where did you hear that?" "I do my research," Adrian said simply. "Just like you do yours. The difference is, I prefer to know all the facts before I commit to something." I watched my father's hands tighten around his napkin. He was calculating, trying to figure out how much Adrian knew and how much damage it could do. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "A revised contract. One that treats Castellano Industries as an equal partner, not a subsidiary you can control." "Impossible. We've already filed the paperwork." "Then unfile it." Adrian's tone was implacable. "Or Isabelle and I walk away from this entire arrangement. Today." My father's eyes shot to me. "Isabelle, you can't be serious about this." This was the moment. The point of no return. I thought about my team. About the division I'd built. About every year I'd spent trying to earn my father's respect and receiving only more control in return. "I'm very serious," I said. "Adrian's right. This contract is unbalanced. If you want this marriage to happen, the terms need to change." "You ungrateful." My father stopped himself, breathing hard. "Do you have any idea what I've sacrificed to build this company? What I've done to protect this family?" "I know exactly what you've done," I said quietly. "I've seen the offshore accounts, the shell companies, the consulting fees that don't quite add up." The blood drained from my father's face. "We're not threatening you," I continued, my voice steady. "We're simply pointing out that we all have something to lose here. You need this expansion. We need our autonomy. So let's find a way to make this work for everyone." "Or what?" my father demanded. "You'll expose me? Your own father?" "We'll do what's necessary," Adrian said. "Just like you taught both of us." The words hung in the air like a blade. My father looked between us, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before: uncertainty. He was losing control of the situation, and he knew it. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked finally, his voice tight. Adrian pulled a folder from his briefcase. "New contract terms. Equal partnership on the European expansion. No veto clauses. No unilateral control. You get your shipping routes. I get my company's independence. We both win. And Isabelle!" "I keep my division," I said. "Full autonomy over acquisitions. No interference, no oversight. You get your social alliance through the marriage. I get my career." My father took the folder, scanning the pages with barely controlled fury. "This is extortion." "This is negotiation," Adrian corrected. "Something you should appreciate, given your business background." For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the tick of the antique clock in the corner, counting down seconds that felt like hours. Finally, my father closed the folder. "I need to review this with my attorneys." "Of course," Adrian said smoothly. "Take until tomorrow. But understand, if we don't have an agreement by Friday, the wedding is off. Publicly, messily, and permanently. You wouldn't dare. The scandal would hurt all of us. I finished. But we're willing to pay that price if you're not willing to negotiate. Are you? My father's jaw worked, rage and calculation warring across his face. He was cornered, and he knew it, but he was also a businessman. And businessmen understood leverage. Friday, he said finally. I'll have a response by Friday. Excellent. Adrian stood, offering me his hand. Then we'll see you at the rehearsal dinner Saturday evening. I took his hand and stood, my legs more solid than I expected. We'd done it. We'd actually stood up to him. As we walked to the door, my father's voice stopped us. Isabelle! I turned. He looked older suddenly. Diminished. You've surprised me. Good, I said. It's about time. Outside, the night air felt like freedom. Adrian and I walked to our cars in silence, both of us processing what had just happened. I started. Terrifying. Adrian suggested. I was going to say exhilarating. He laughed, a real laugh that transformed his face. It was both. Did you see his face when you mentioned the offshore accounts? I thought he was going to have a heart attack. We reached my car, and I leaned against it, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind a shaky awareness of what we'd just done. He's going to come back with something, I said. Some counter-move we haven't anticipated. Probably. Adrian leaned against the car beside me. But we have him on the defensive now. That's new territory for him. For all of us. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the lights of the city spread out below us. The estate was on a hill, and from here you could see everything. The towers downtown, the suburbs beyond, the river cutting through it all like a silver ribbon. My father built all this, I said quietly. Everything you can see, he had a hand in building. And I used to think that was impressive. That level of control, that power. And now I think it's lonely, exhausting. I turned to look at Adrian. He has everything except people who actually choose to be in his life. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Is that what we're doing? Choosing. We chose to fight back. That's something. It is. He pushed off from the car. I should let you go. It's late, and we both have early meetings tomorrow. Adrian, I said as he started toward his car. Thank you for having my back in there. Partners, he said simply. That's what we agreed to. But as I drove home, I realized it was becoming more than that. We were building something unexpected. Not romance, not friendship exactly, but something solid and real. An alliance forged in shared defiance. The next 3 days passed in a blur of work and waiting. My father didn't call, didn't text, gave no indication of what he was thinking. The silence was its own form of psychological warfare. Friday morning, I was in my office reviewing the Henderson merger when Margaret appeared in my doorway. Your father would like to see you in his office, she said. He asked me to tell you that Mr. Castellano is already there. My stomach tightened. Now! I saved my work and took the elevator to the executive floor, my mind running through possibilities. Had we pushed too hard? Was he calling our bluff? Or had we actually won? Adrian was standing near the window when I entered, his expression unreadable. My father sat behind his desk, the revised contract in front of him. Sit down, Isabelle, my father said. I sat. He pushed the contract across the desk. I've reviewed your terms with my legal team. They've convinced me that your concerns have merit. I kept my expression neutral, but inside triumph surged. I'm prepared to accept most of your proposed changes, he continued. The veto clause will be removed. Castellano Industries will have equal partnership status. Isabelle, you'll retain full autonomy over your division. Most of the changes? Adrian asked. Which ones are you not accepting? My father's smile was thin. The prenuptial agreement. I'm adding a clause that states if this marriage ends within the first 3 years, both of you forfeit any claim to Whitmore holding stock. I glanced at Adrian. We hadn't discussed a prenup at all. I don't have any claim to Whitmore stock, Adrian pointed out. No, but Isabelle does. She inherited shares from her mother. My father looked at me. If this marriage fails quickly, I want assurance that those shares stay in the family. That they can't be used as leverage in a divorce settlement. It was a reasonable request, actually. Almost too reasonable. Fine, I said. I agree to the prenup. As do I, Adrian added. My father's expression flickered with surprise. He'd expected us to fight this, to see it as another attempt at control. Then we have an agreement, he said slowly. We do. Adrian stood, extending his hand across the desk. Thank you for being willing to negotiate. My father shook his hand, but his eyes were hard. Don't mistake this for weakness. I'm agreeing because it serves my interests. Nothing more. Understood, Adrian said. As we left the office, I felt my father's eyes on us. Assessing. Recalculating. We'd won this round, but the war was far from over. In the elevator, Adrian turned to me. The prenup was smart. It makes him think he got something. And it protects both of us, I agreed. If this arrangement eventually ends, neither of us wants a messy divorce fight. True. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. So, we did it. We actually renegotiated the terms. We did. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright, almost celebratory. We stood on the sidewalk, neither quite ready to return to our separate offices yet. The wedding is in 8 days, Adrian said. I know. Are you ready? I thought about the question. Ready to marry a stranger? No. Ready to commit to a business arrangement disguised as a marriage? Still no. But ready to walk into this new reality with my eyes open, with a partner who had my back, with terms I'd actually fought for? Yes, I said. I think I am. Adrian's smile was small but genuine. Good. Because we make a pretty effective team. We do, don't we? He checked his watch. I have to get back. Logistics meeting in 20 minutes. But I'll see you tomorrow at the rehearsal dinner. Unfortunately, he laughed. It won't be that bad. We'll get through it. Together, I said. Together, he echoed. As I walked back to my own building, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Everything okay? Your father's assistant said there was an emergency meeting. Everything's fine, I typed back. Actually, everything's better than fine. I'll explain later. Because it was. For the first time since this entire nightmare began, I felt like I had some control over my own life. My father had taught me that power came from control. But Adrian and I had just proven something different. Real power came from knowing when to stand your ground, from finding allies in unexpected places, and from being willing to risk everything for autonomy. 8 days until the wedding. 8 days until I walked down the aisle toward a man I barely knew. But for the first time, I was walking toward it on my own terms. And that made all the difference. Chapter 5. Rehearsal and Revelation. The rehearsal dinner was held at the estate. Naturally, my father had transformed the ballroom into something out of a magazine spread. White roses, candlelight, crystal everywhere. 100 guests when he'd promised 50. Performance on a grand scale. I arrived early, hoping for a moment to collect myself before the chaos began. Instead, I found my mother's sister, Aunt Helen, waiting in the garden. Isabelle, she said, rising from the bench. I was hoping to catch you alone. Helen was nothing like my father, warm where he was cold, intuitive where he was calculating. She'd been my refuge as a child, the one person who seemed to understand that living in this house was like living in a museum. Aunt Helen! I kissed her cheek. I didn't know you'd arrived. Just now. Your father has me staying in the West Wing, as far from the festivities as possible. Her smile was wry. We both know why. Because she'd opposed this arrangement from the beginning. She'd been the only one to ask me, directly, if this was what I wanted. I hadn't been able to lie to her then. I couldn't now. How are you really? She asked, taking my hands. I'm managing. That's not the same as being happy. No, I agreed. It's not. She studied my face with the intensity that had always made me feel seen. Your mother would have hated this. She married your father for love, foolish as that turned out to be. She would have wanted better for you. My throat tightened. I know, but you're going through with it anyway. I don't have a choice, Helen. My division, my team. There's always a choice, darling. Sometimes they're all terrible, but they exist. She squeezed my hands. I just want you to know that whatever you decide, even if you walk away from all of this tomorrow, you have a place with me. Always. The offer settled in my chest like a warm stone. Thank you. Now. She straightened, her tone shifting to something lighter. Tell me about this Adrian. Is he at least tolerable? I surprised myself by smiling. He's more than tolerable, actually. He's smart, strategic. He's not what I expected. High praise from you. Helen's eyes sharpened. Isabelle, are you? No, I said quickly. It's not like that. We're partners. Allies. This is still a business arrangement. If you say so. Before I could respond, voices drifted from the terrace. Guests arriving. Time to put on the performance. I should go, I said. Helen nodded, but her expression remained concerned. Remember what I said? You always have a choice. I made my way back to the house, those words echoing in my mind. A choice. As if anything about this had been my choice. Inside, the ballroom was filling rapidly. I recognized most of the faces, family friends, business associates, people who'd known me since childhood and were now watching to see if I'd successfully transform into the role my father had assigned me. Isabelle, my cousin Margaret, different Margaret, not my father's assistant, pulled me into an enthusiastic hug. You look stunning. Where's the lucky groom? Not here yet. Well, I'm dying to meet him. Everyone's been talking about how handsome he is. And successful. You must be thrilled. I made a non-committal sound and extracted myself as politely as possible. The next hour was a blur of similar conversations. Everyone wanted to offer congratulations, advice, stories about their own marriages. No one asked if I was happy. They just assumed the expensive dress and elaborate venue meant I must be. By the time Adrian arrived, I was nursing my second glass of champagne and contemplating escape routes. Sorry I'm late, he said, appearing at my elbow. Conference call ran long. He looked tired, I realized. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there at our last meeting. Rough day? I asked quietly. Just busy. The expansion plans are moving faster than expected. He accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. How long have you been here? Too long. And we haven't even started the rehearsal yet. Speaking of which, he checked his watch. Isn't that supposed to begin soon? As if on cue, the wedding planner appeared, clipboard in hand, looking harried. There you are. We're already 15 minutes behind schedule. Everyone to the ceremony site, please. We were herded out to the garden, where a temporary altar had been erected under a massive oak tree. White chairs were arranged in perfect rows. It looked exactly like a wedding venue should look. It felt nothing like what a wedding should feel like. The planner positioned us at the altar while she explained the processional. Who would walk in what order? Where we should stand, when to speak our vows. And then, she said brightly, Adrian will kiss the bride, and you'll walk back down the aisle as husband and wife. The word husband sounded foreign. Wrong. I glanced at Adrian, and found him looking at me with the same expression I probably wore, resignation mixed with grim determination. Can we run through it once? The planner asked. We ran through it. Then again. Then a third time because someone's aunt had questions about the flower arrangements. By the time we were released, I was exhausted and the rehearsal dinner hadn't even started. I need air, I muttered to Adrian. The dinner's about to begin. I don't care. I need 5 minutes away from all of this. Understanding crossed his face. I'll cover for you. Take 10 if you need it. I slipped away while the planner was reorganizing the seating chart, heading for the far side of the garden where the old greenhouse sat abandoned. My mother had loved this greenhouse once, before my father had declared it inefficient and moved on to more impressive landscaping. Inside, it smelled of earth and forgotten things. Broken pots, overgrown vines, glass panels clouded with age. It was the most real place on the entire estate. I sat on an old wooden bench and let myself breathe. This time tomorrow I'd be married. Legally bound to a man I'd known for less than 3 weeks. Living a life I hadn't chosen, playing a role I'd never auditioned for. But I'd also be free of my father's immediate control. I'd have my division, my career, my autonomy, or as much autonomy as any of us ever really had. It was a trade. Everything was a trade. The greenhouse door opened. I thought I might find you here, Adrian said. How? You get this look when you're about to bolt. I'm learning to recognize it. He sat beside me on the bench. Your Aunt Helen told me where you used to hide as a kid. You met Helen? Charming woman. She threatened to castrate me if I hurt you. Despite everything, I laughed. That sounds like her. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, surrounded by broken pottery and wild growth. Are you okay? Adrian asked finally. Honestly, I don't know. I picked at a piece of chipped paint on the bench. This time tomorrow everything changes. It's already changed. This is just making it official. That's not comforting. No, I suppose it's not. He leaned back, looking up at the clouded glass ceiling. You know, I keep waiting for this to feel real. The wedding, the marriage, all of it. But it still feels like I'm watching someone else's life. I know exactly what you mean. Do you ever wonder, he said slowly, what would have happened if we'd met differently? Under normal circumstances. The question caught me off guard. I don't know. Would we have even talked to each other? Probably not. Different worlds. He smiled slightly. You would have been the intimidating consultant who closed impossible deals. I would have been the aggressive shipping CEO who made enemies faster than allies. Would have been. Fair point. Still am. I found myself smiling despite the weight in my chest. So maybe it's better this way. At least we're on the same side. Are we? Adrian turned to look at me. Isabelle, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay. Do you trust me? The question hung in the dusty air between us. Did I trust him? I'd known him for less than a month. He was strategic, calculating, capable of the kind of ruthless decision-making that built empires. But he'd also stood up to my father. He'd fought for terms that protected both of us. He'd asked what I wanted instead of telling me what I should want. Yes, I said finally. Surprisingly, I do. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, maybe. Or something deeper. Good, he said. Because I trust you too. And that's unusual for me. For me too. We sat with that admission, both of us understanding what it meant. In our worlds, trust was currency. Rare and valuable. The greenhouse door opened again. This time it was Sarah, looking apologetic. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but your father is asking for you both. The dinner is starting. Of course it is, I muttered. Adrian stood, offering me his hand. Ready to face the firing squad? Do I have a choice? You always have a choice. He repeated Helen's words, but his tone made them sound different. Less like comfort, more like fact. You can walk out right now. Disappear. I'd cover for you. I stared at him. You're serious. Completely. If this is too much, if you need an escape route, I'll provide it. No questions asked. For a moment, I actually considered it. Just walking away from all of it. The wedding, the arrangement, the weight of expectations I'd carried my entire life. But then I thought about my team. About the division I'd built. About standing in my father's office and demanding terms instead of accepting them. No, I said, taking Adrian's hand and standing. I'm not running. Not anymore. His smile was small but approving. Then let's go show them how this is done. The rehearsal dinner was exactly as excessive as expected. 7 courses, 4 wines, endless toasts that ranged from genuinely touching to painfully awkward. My father stood and spoke about legacy and tradition. Adrian's uncle talked about the importance of family. My brother Thomas, slightly drunk, rambled about marriage being a partnership. To Isabelle and Adrian, he concluded, raising his glass. May you find in each other what the rest of us are still looking for. I caught his eye across the table. He looked sad, I realized. Envious, even. When it was Adrian's turn to speak, he stood with a confidence that silenced the room. Thank you all for being here tonight, he began. I know this marriage has surprised many people. The timeline, the arrangement, the circumstances. He paused, his eyes finding mine. But I want you to know that Isabelle and I understand exactly what we're doing. We're building something new. A partnership based on mutual respect, shared goals, and the belief that we're stronger together than apart. It was a speech crafted for the audience, but something in his tone made it feel personal. Real. To my future wife, he said, raising his glass. Thank you for being brave enough to take this risk with me. The room erupted in applause and clinking glasses. Across the table, my father looked satisfied, believing Adrian's words meant submission. He had no idea they meant the opposite. After dinner, as guests mingled over dessert and coffee, I found myself on the terrace with Helen again. He's good, she said, watching Adrian navigate a conversation with my father's business associates. Smart. Controlled. He knows how to work a room. He does. But that's not why you're going through with this, is it? The fact that he's capable. I looked at my aunt. What do you mean? I mean, you could have found 100 capable men if that's all you wanted. But you're marrying this one because he makes you feel less alone in all of this. The observation landed like an arrow. Helen! I'm not judging, darling. I'm just observing. She squeezed my shoulder. Just be careful. It's easy to confuse alliance with affection, especially when you're both trapped in the same cage. Before I could respond, Adrian appeared at my elbow. Sorry to interrupt, but your father wants a family photo. Apparently the photographer is getting impatient. Helen smiled knowingly. Of course. Go. Be the perfect bride-to-be. The photo session took 40 minutes. My father insisted on every possible combination: immediate family, extended family, bride and groom alone, bride and groom with parents, on and on until the photographer's smile became strained. One more, my father said for the 7th time. Adrian, put your arm around Isabelle. Look at her like you mean it. Adrian's arm settled around my waist, warm and solid. When I looked up at him, I found him already looking down at me with an expression that was hard to read. The camera flashed. Perfect, the photographer exclaimed. That's the one. As we broke apart, Adrian leaned close enough that only I could hear. Helen's right, you know. About what? About us making each other feel less alone. His voice was quiet. I don't know what this marriage is going to be, Isabelle, but I'm glad it's with you and not someone else. Before I could respond, we were swept back into the crowd, into more conversations and congratulations and performances. But his words stayed with me for the rest of the evening. I'm glad it's with you. It wasn't love. It wasn't even romance. But maybe, just maybe, it was something better. Something we could actually build on. The rehearsal dinner finally ended around midnight. Guests departed with promises to see us tomorrow at the ceremony. Adrian walked me to my car, a gesture that had become habit over the last few weeks. Big day tomorrow, he said. Don't remind me. Second thoughts. I consider the question, not about the marriage itself, about what comes after. The unknown parts. All the unknown parts. I unlocked my car but didn't get in. Adrian, what happens after the wedding? Do we just go back to our regular lives? Pretend we're married when people are watching and ignore each other the rest of the time? Is that what you want? I don't know what I want. That's the problem. He was quiet for a moment, thinking. What if we figured it out as we went? Made our own rules instead of following someone else's? That's terrifyingly vague. I know, but it's also honest. He met my eyes. I can't promise you romance or happily ever after, but I can promise partnership, respect, and a genuine effort to make this work on terms we both agree to. It was the most honest thing anyone had said to me in weeks. Okay, I said. That's enough. Yeah. His smile was small but genuine. Then I'll see you at the altar tomorrow, partner. See you there. I drove home with my mind spinning. Tomorrow I'd put on a white dress and walk down an aisle and promise forever to a man I barely knew. But I wouldn't be doing it blind anymore. I wouldn't be doing it alone. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to build something real on. Even if real looked nothing like what I'd imagined. At home, I found a package waiting outside my door. Inside was a leather-bound journal with a note in Adrian's handwriting. For keeping track of the rules we make as we go. First entry. Partners first, everything else second. A. I carried it inside and set it on my nightstand, next to the photograph of my mother. Tomorrow everything would change. But tonight, for the first time, I felt ready for it. Ready to walk toward the unknown with my eyes open. Ready to build something new from the ashes of what I'd lost. Ready to trust that sometimes the most unexpected alliances became the strongest foundations. I opened the journal and wrote the first entry. Rule number 1, partners first, everything else second. Rule number 2, honesty, even when it's hard. Rule number 3, we choose each other, every day, until we don't anymore. Tomorrow I'd walk down the aisle. But tonight, I just made the first real choice in this entire arrangement. And that choice was to try, really try, to make this impossible situation into something that might actually work. The wedding was 12 hours away. 12 hours until everything changed. But for the first time, I was walking toward it willingly. And that made all the difference. Chapter 6, The Wedding. I woke up on my wedding day to rain. Not the romantic, gentle kind. The aggressive, window-rattling kind that felt like an omen. My phone showed 6:47 a.m. The ceremony wasn't until 3. I had 8 hours to get ready, to transform into the bride my father expected me to be. I stayed in bed for another 20 minutes, staring at the ceiling, trying to reconcile the fact that tonight I'd go to sleep as a married woman. The journal Adrian had given me sat on my nightstand. I'd written 3 more rules last night before falling asleep. Rule number 4, no lies between us, even comfortable ones. Rule number 5, we protect each other from our fathers. Rule number 6, this marriage doesn't define us. We define it. Bold words for someone who was about to put on a white dress and perform the most traditional ceremony imaginable. My phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. How are you holding up? Ask me in 9 hours, I typed back. Fair. For what it's worth, I didn't sleep. Neither did I. Then we're starting this exhausted and terrified. Seems appropriate. I smiled despite myself. See you at the altar. Try not to run. Same to you. At 8, the hair and makeup team arrived at my apartment. My father's gift, naturally. They transformed my living room into a salon, complete with champagne I didn't drink and pastries I couldn't eat. Sarah came by at 9 with the dress. She hung it carefully on the back of my bedroom door, and we both stood there staring at it. It's beautiful, she said softly. It was. Ivory silk, simple but elegant, custom-made to my exact measurements. The kind of dress that costs more than most people's cars. Bella, Sarah said carefully, can I ask you something? Of course. Are you happy? The question I'd been avoiding for weeks. I don't know, I said honestly. Ask me again in a year. She nodded, accepting the non-answer. Well, for what it's worth, I think Adrian is good for you. You seem steadier when he's around. Steadier. Less like you're holding everything together by sheer force of will. She smiled. More like you have backup. Maybe she was right. Maybe having a partner, even one assigned by contract, made the weight easier to carry. By 11, I was in the dress. The makeup artist had done her job well. I looked bridal, glowing, perfectly composed. The woman in the mirror could have been anyone. Helen arrived at noon with a small velvet box. Your mother's pearls, she said, opening it. She wore them on her wedding day. I thought you might want them. The necklace was simple, elegant. I remembered my mother wearing it to important events, touching it absently when she was nervous. Help me put it on, I asked. Helen fastened the clasp, her hands gentle. In the mirror, our eyes met. You look just like her, she said quietly. That's not always a compliment. No, but today it is. She squeezed my shoulders. Your mother made mistakes, Isabelle. She married your father for love and spent 20 years regretting it. But she never regretted you. And she would be proud of how you're handling all of this. By giving in, by surviving. Helen turned me to face her. Listen to me. Marriage to a difficult man doesn't have to break you. Your mother let it, but you don't have to. You're stronger than she was, smarter. And unlike her, you have a partner who seems to actually respect you. It's a business arrangement, Helen. Maybe. But I've seen the way he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching. That's not just business. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from my father. Car is waiting. Don't be late. Time to go, I said. The estate looked like something from a fairy tale. The rain had stopped an hour ago, leaving everything glistening. White flowers everywhere, crystal chandeliers hung from trees, an orchestra warming up near the ceremony site. 300 guests. My father hadn't been able to resist turning this into a spectacle. I was sequestered in a private room while guests arrived, watching through the window as luxury cars deposited people I'd known my entire life. People who thought they knew me. My father appeared at 2:45, immaculate in his tuxedo. You look appropriate, he said. High praise from him. Thank you. He studied me for a long moment. I hope you understand why this was necessary. The alliance, the timing, all of it. I understand you did what you thought was best for the company. For the family, he corrected. This secures our future, Isabelle. Yours included. I didn't argue. What was the point? It's time, he said, offering his arm. We walked through the estate to the garden. The orchestra began playing. Guests stood. Through the crowd, I could see Adrian waiting at the altar, hands clasped, expression unreadable. This was it. The moment everything became real. My father and I began the long walk down the aisle. Every eye was on us. Cameras flashing. Whispers behind gloved hands. I kept my eyes forward, focused on Adrian. He was watching me with an intensity that made it easier to breathe somehow. Like he was sending a message. We're in this together. Halfway down the aisle, I realized something. I wasn't afraid. Anxious, yes. Uncertain, absolutely. But not afraid. Because at the end of this walk wasn't a stranger anymore. It was a partner. We reached the altar. My father placed my hand in Adrian's, and the warmth of his palm steadied me. Take care of her, my father said quietly. I will, Adrian replied, but he was looking at me, not my father. The officiant began speaking. Words about love and commitment and building a life together. Beautiful words that had nothing to do with why we were really here. But then came the vows. Do you, Adrian Castellano, take Isabelle Whitmore to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? Adrian's eyes held mine. I do. And do you, Isabelle Whitmore, take Adrian Castellano to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? This was the moment, the point of no return. I thought about the journal, about the rules we'd written together, about choosing each other, even when the choice wasn't really ours to begin with. I do, I said clearly. The officiant smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. Adrian stepped closer, his hands coming to rest gently on my waist. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted to. I didn't pull away. Our lips met, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just us. The kiss was soft, brief, appropriate for the audience. But there was something underneath it. A promise, maybe, or just acknowledgement that we were in this now, completely. When we pulled apart, the crowd erupted in applause. Ladies and gentlemen, the officiant announced, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Castellano. Mrs. Castellano. The name felt foreign, like a coat that didn't quite fit. Adrian took my hand, and we walked back down the aisle together. Husband and wife. Partners. Whatever we were becoming. The reception was in the estate's grand ballroom, transformed into something out of a dream. Or a nightmare, depending on your perspective. We were immediately swept into photos. First dance, cake cutting, all the rituals that weddings demanded. Adrian played his part perfectly, his hand always at my back, his smile appropriately affectionate for the cameras. How are you doing? He murmured during a brief moment alone. Surviving. You. Same. He glanced around at the crowd. Only 4 more hours of this. 4 hours. Your father has planned entertainment through 9. Apparently there's a fireworks display. Of course there is. Our first dance began. Adrian pulled me into his arms, and we moved to music I didn't recognize. Everyone watched. They always watched, judging, assessing, gossiping. Ignore them, Adrian said quietly. Just focus on me. I did. It was easier that way. You know, he said. For a completely arranged marriage to a near stranger, this isn't entirely terrible. I laughed despite myself. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. I'm full of romance. Just wait until the toast. You're giving a toast? Of course. It's expected. His smile was wry. Don't worry. I'll keep it appropriately sentimental and completely meaningless. But when the time came for toasts, Adrian surprised me. He stood at the microphone, glass in hand, and waited for silence. Thank you all for being here today, he began. I know many of you are wondering about this marriage. The speed of it, the arrangement of it, the business sense of it. He paused. And you're right to wonder. This isn't a traditional love story. The room had gone completely silent. But I want you to know something about Isabelle, Adrian continued, his eyes finding mine across the room. In the 3 weeks I've known her, she's shown me what real strength looks like. Not the kind that comes from money or position, but the kind that comes from choosing to stand up for yourself even when it's terrifying. The kind that comes from refusing to be defined by other people's expectations. My throat tightened. I can't promise you a fairy tale, Adrian said. But I can promise that I will respect her, support her, and fight beside her for whatever we decide to build together. Because that's what partnership actually means. He raised his glass. To my wife. Thank you for taking this leap with me. The room erupted in applause, but I barely heard it. I was too focused on Adrian's face, on the sincerity in his expression. That wasn't performance. That was real. When he returned to our table, I leaned close. Thank you. For what? For seeing me. His hand found mine under the table. Always. The rest of the reception blurred. More dancing, more congratulations, more performance. But Adrian stayed close, a constant presence that made it all bearable. Around 8, I excused myself to the bathroom, desperate for a moment alone. In the ornate powder room, I stared at my reflection, the perfect bride, the dutiful daughter, the woman who just promised forever to a man she barely knew. But I also saw something else. Someone who'd fought for terms instead of accepting them. Someone who'd found an unexpected ally. Someone who was writing her own rules, even if they were written in the margins of someone else's contract. The door opened. Helen slipped inside. Escaping? She asked. Just breathing. She stood beside me, both of us reflected in the elaborate mirror. You did well today. Better than well. I walked down an aisle and said 2 words. Not exactly an achievement. You survived your father's machinations with your spirit intact. That's an achievement. Helen turned to face me. And that toast Adrian gave? That wasn't the speech of a man in a loveless arrangement. Helen! I'm not saying you're in love. I'm saying there's potential there. If you want it. Did I want it? I didn't know. The idea of this marriage becoming real in any emotional sense felt dangerous. Like giving hostages to fortune. Be careful, Helen said, as if reading my mind. But also be open. Sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected places. Back at the reception, the fireworks were beginning. Adrian found me on the terrace, where I'd gone to watch. Hiding again? He asked. Observing. He stood beside me, both of us watching colored lights explode against the dark sky. This is it, he said quietly. After tonight, everything changes. We'll live together, work together, be seen together. We'll actually be married. Terrifying thought. Completely. He turned to look at me. Isabelle, I meant what I said in the toast. About partnership. About fighting beside you. I know. Do you? Because I need you to understand, this isn't just strategy anymore. Somewhere in the last few weeks, I started actually caring about making this work. Not just surviving it. Making it work. The admission hung between us. Honest and vulnerable. I care too, I said quietly. That's what scares me. Why does it scare you? Because caring gives you power to hurt me. And I've spent my whole life trying not to give anyone that power. Adrian nodded slowly. I understand that. But Isabelle, we're already married. We already have the power to hurt each other. The question is what we do with it. A particularly brilliant firework exploded overhead, bathing us both in gold light. What do you want to do with it? I asked. Build something real. Not perfect, not a fairy tale, but real. Something we both choose every day. It was the same thing I'd written in the journal. Rule number 3. We choose each other, every day, until we don't anymore. Okay, I said. Let's try. Yeah. His smile was slow, genuine. Then come here, wife. He pulled me into his arms, and we stood there while fireworks painted the sky above us. It wasn't romantic in the traditional sense, but it was honest, real. A beginning. The party finally ended around 10. Guests departed with champagne-fueled enthusiasm, calling out congratulations and advice. My father looked satisfied, believing his plan had worked exactly as intended. He had no idea we'd rewritten it entirely. Adrian and I were driven to the hotel, my father's wedding gift, a penthouse suite for our wedding night. The driver left us at the entrance with a knowing smile that made me want to disappear. In the elevator, we stood in awkward silence. So, Adrian said finally, this is weird. Extremely. I reserved a separate room, he said quickly. I didn't assume. I know this is all strange enough without. Thank you, I interrupted, relieved. That was thoughtful. We reached the penthouse. Inside, it was absurdly luxurious, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a massive bedroom, a living area bigger than my first apartment, and one very large bed. "I'll take the couch," Adrian said immediately. "Don't be ridiculous. It's your wedding night, too. Isabelle, we're adults. We can share a bed platonically for one night." I kicked off my heels, suddenly exhausted. "Besides, that couch looks uncomfortable, and you're too tall for it." He hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but I'm sleeping on top of the covers. Deal." I changed in the bathroom, trading the wedding dress for the silk pajamas I'd packed. When I emerged, Adrian was already in bed, fully clothed except for his jacket and tie, lying rigidly on top of the comforter. "You're going to be freezing," I said. "I'll survive." I got into bed, pulling the covers up. We lay there in the dark, both staring at the ceiling, acutely aware of each other. "So," I said, "we're married." "We are. How do you feel about that?" "Ask me in the morning." I smiled. "Fair." Silence settled. Then Adrian spoke again. "Isabelle." "Yeah. Thank you for not running. For actually trying to make this work. Thank you for giving me reasons to try." More silence. Comfortable this time. "Good night, husband," I said softly. "Good night, wife." I fell asleep to the sound of his breathing, steady and sure beside me. And for the first time in weeks, I slept without nightmares. When I woke up, pale morning light was filtering through the windows. I was warm, comfortable, and Adrian's arm was around my waist. Sometime during the night, we gravitated toward each other. He was still asleep, his face relaxed in a way I'd never seen while he was awake. I should have moved, should have extracted myself before he woke up and made this awkward. But I didn't. Instead, I lay there for a moment, trying to identify what I was feeling. Not love. It was too soon for that. Too complicated. But maybe safety. Trust. The beginning of something that could become important if we let it. Adrian stirred, his eyes opening. For a second, he looked confused. Then awareness returned. "Sorry," he said, starting to pull away. "I didn't mean." "It's okay," I said. "We were just cold." "Right. Cold." We both knew it wasn't just that. But for now, the comfortable lie was enough. Adrian sat up, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "So, first day of marriage. How does it feel?" "Surprisingly normal." "That's good, right?" "I think so." He stood, stretching. "I'm going to order breakfast." "Any preferences?" "Coffee. Lots of coffee." He smiled. "I can do that." While he called room service, I walked to the window and looked out over the city. Somewhere down there, my father was probably already at his office, believing he'd secured his empire. He had no idea we were just getting started. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Congratulations, Mrs. Castellano. How does it feel to be married?" I looked back at Adrian, who was laughing at something the room service operator had said. "Different," I typed back. "But not bad." And surprisingly, it was the truth. The wedding was over. The marriage was beginning. And for the first time, I was curious to see where it might lead. Not afraid. Not resigned. Curious. That felt like progress. Chapter 7. The New Normal. The honeymoon was 2 weeks in the Mediterranean, my father's idea naturally. We flew to Greece the day after the wedding, first-class tickets, and a villa in Santorini that cost more per night than most people earned in a month. It was excessive, performative, and completely unnecessary. It was also surprisingly pleasant. The villa was private, perched on a cliff with a view of the Aegean Sea. No photographers, no guests, no expectations beyond the ones we set for ourselves. "This is surreal," I said on our first morning, standing on the terrace with coffee while the sun turned the water gold. Adrian appeared beside me, hair still damp from his shower. "Which part? The Greek island, the arranged marriage, or the fact that we're actually getting along?" "All of it." He smiled and took a sip from his own cup. "For what it's worth, I think we should establish some ground rules for the next 2 weeks." "More rules." "Important ones." He set down his coffee. 1. We don't talk about work unless one of us specifically wants to. 2. We don't talk about our fathers at all. 3. We actually try to enjoy this, even if it started as an obligation. "Those are good rules," I admitted. And 4, he continued, we're honest with each other. If something feels weird or uncomfortable, we say so. No pretending. Deal. We shook on it, formal and slightly ridiculous, and I found myself laughing. What? Adrian asked. We just made a contract about not making this feel like a contract. The irony isn't lost on me. He picked up his coffee again. So what do you want to do today? I have no idea. I've never been on a honeymoon before. Neither have I. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through options. The concierge suggested a boat tour, wine tasting, or we could just stay here and do nothing. Nothing sounds perfect. So we did nothing. We read books on the terrace, swam in the infinity pool, ate fresh seafood that a local chef prepared in the villa's kitchen. It was the most relaxed I'd felt in months. That evening, we sat on the terrace watching the sunset paint the sky in impossible colors. Can I ask you something? Adrian said. Sure. What made you agree to your father's original deal? The one where you got 3 years of freedom in exchange for eventual marriage. I took a sip of wine, considering how much to share. I was desperate. My mother had just died, and I'd inherited her shares in the company. My father wanted me to sign them over to him to simplify management. I knew if I did that, I'd have nothing. No leverage, no power, nothing that was mine. So you negotiated? I tried. He laughed at first. Said I was being emotional, that I didn't understand business. That I should trust him to manage everything. I stared out at the darkening sea. So I told him I'd sign over the shares if he let me prove I could build something on my own first. 3 years. If I failed, I'd give him everything. The shares and whatever marriage he wanted. If I succeeded, I got autonomy. And you succeeded. I did. I built that division from nothing. Hired my own team, closed my own deals, made my own reputation. The memory still stung. And then he collected anyway. Because there was always a second clause I didn't see coming. Adrian was quiet for a moment. My father did something similar. Left me the company, but also left me his debts, his enemies, his impossible expectations. Like he was testing me from beyond the grave. Did you pass? I'm still here, aren't I? He smiled wryly. But there were moments I wanted to walk away. Sell everything. Start over somewhere no one knew my name. Why didn't you? Pride, maybe. Or stubbornness. I wanted to prove that I could take what he left me and make it better. Make it mine. He looked at me. I think you understand that. I do. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from genuine understanding. You know what's strange? I said eventually. I feel more myself here, with you, than I have in years. Even though this whole situation is completely artificial. Maybe it's because we're not performing for anyone else. Just each other. Maybe. That night, we slept in the same bed again. Not out of necessity this time, but because it felt natural. We'd established a routine. Him on the left, me on the right, enough space between us to be appropriate but close enough to feel connected. I woke up the next morning to find Adrian already awake, reading something on his tablet. Morning, I mumbled. Morning. Coffee's on your nightstand. I sat up, touched by the thoughtfulness. You're getting good at this husband thing. I'm trying. He set down the tablet. Fair warning, I broke rule 1. I checked my email. Anything important? The European expansion is moving faster than expected. The first shipments are scheduled for next month. He hesitated. Your father's been trying to reach me. 3 emails since yesterday. The peaceful bubble popped slightly. What does he want? To discuss logistics, which probably means he wants to assert control over something. I sipped my coffee, thinking. We should probably respond. Show we're engaged with the business, but not jumping at his every message. Agreed. I'll send something professional and vague. Enjoying our honeymoon, we'll touch base when we return. Perfect. The rest of our honeymoon followed a similar pattern. Days of genuine relaxation punctuated by small intrusions from the real world. We explored the island, tried local wines, learned to cook Greek food from the chef. We talked about everything except our fathers and our uncertain future. And slowly, something shifted between us. It wasn't romance, not exactly. But it was closeness, the kind that comes from letting someone see you without armor. One night, after too much wine, we ended up on the beach below the villa, sitting on the sand while waves lapped at our feet. "Can I tell you something?" I asked. "Anything. I'm scared of going back. To the real world, to our fathers, to all the expectations." Adrian was quiet for a moment. "Me too." "Really?" "Of course. This has been easy. 2 weeks in paradise, no one watching, no consequences. But when we get back, we have to actually live this marriage. Share a home, merge our lives, deal with everyone's opinions and interference." "We could just stay here," I suggested, only half joking. Tempting, but our teams would probably notice eventually. I laughed, then sobered. "Adrian, what if we can't make it work? What if this partnership falls apart the moment real pressure gets applied?" He reached over and took my hand. It was the most deliberately affectionate gesture he'd made since the wedding kiss. "Then we'll deal with it together. That's what partners do. You make it sound simple. It's not, but it's possible." He squeezed my hand. "Isabelle, I know this marriage started as strategy, as survival, but I think we've built something real here. Maybe not conventional, but real. And I want to protect that when we go back." "How?" "By remembering this feeling, this ease. By choosing each other even when it's hard." He met my eyes in the moonlight. "By keeping the promises we made in that journal." I leaned my head against his shoulder, and he didn't pull away. We sat there while the Mediterranean whispered against the shore, both of us gathering strength for what came next. Our last day in Greece, I woke up alone. Adrian was on the terrace, phone pressed to his ear, expression grim. When he saw me, he ended the call quickly. "What's wrong?" I asked. "That was my CFO. There's a problem with one of our shipments. Customs hold in Rotterdam. It's probably nothing, but it could be something." "Yeah." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I'm sorry. I know we said no work, but I need to make a few calls." "It's fine. Do what you need to do." I left him to his crisis management and went for a walk through the village. When I returned an hour later, he was still on the phone, pacing the terrace with controlled intensity. He'd shifted back into CEO mode. I could see it in his posture, his tone, the way he commanded attention even thousands of miles away. This was the man the business world saw. Decisive, ruthless when necessary, completely in control. When he finally hung up, he looked drained. "Everything okay?" I asked. "For now." It was a paperwork issue, nothing serious. But it reminded me that I can't hide on a Greek island forever. Neither can I. We spent our last evening packing in silence, the easy intimacy of the past 2 weeks giving way to something more cautious. Like we were both preparing armor for the battle ahead. On the flight home, Adrian worked on his laptop while I read reports Sarah had sent over. We were side by side physically, but already retreating into our separate professional identities. When we landed, there was a car waiting, sent by my father, according to the driver. "He wants to see us tomorrow morning," Adrian said, reading a message on his phone. "Both of us. At the office." "Of course he does." We drove to Adrian's penthouse, our home now, technically, though I'd only seen it once before the wedding. It was sleek, modern, impersonal. The kind of place designed for someone who worked 18-hour days and slept 6 hours a night. "I cleared out half the closet for you," Adrian said, carrying my suitcase to the bedroom. "And I had Diana stock the bathroom with whatever you might need. She said she guessed, so if something's wrong, just let me know." The thoughtfulness caught me off guard. "Thank you. There's an office down the hall you can use. I know you'll need space for work." He set down the suitcase. "And Isabelle, about sleeping arrangements. We don't have to share a bed if you don't want to," I said quickly. "It's not that I don't want to." He looked uncomfortable. "It's that we should probably decide what we're doing. If this is permanent, or just until we figure out separate rooms, or—" "Let's just see how it goes," I suggested. "We managed fine in Greece." "Okay. Yeah. We can do that." That night felt different from the villa. The bed was bigger, the room less familiar, the city sounds outside a reminder that we were back in the real world. We lay in the dark, both pretending to sleep, both acutely aware of each other. "Adrian," I said quietly. "Yeah. Thank you. For the honeymoon. For making it more than just obligation. Thank you for trying. For being willing to build something instead of just surviving. Good night." "Good night." I woke up the next morning to my alarm, already anxious about my father's summons. Adrian was in the kitchen, dressed for battle in a sharp suit, making coffee. "Ready?" he asked. "No, but let's go anyway." We drove separately to Whitmore Holdings, maintaining the appearance of independence, even though we'd come from the same home. My father's office felt smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was just bigger now. He was waiting with a man I didn't recognize. Late 50s, expensive suit, predatory smile. "Isabelle, Adrian, glad you could make it." My father gestured to the stranger. "This is Richard Vance, representing the consortium I mentioned. The hostile takeover group." Adrian and I exchanged a glance. "Mr. Vance," Adrian said carefully, "I wasn't aware we'd be having guests. I thought it prudent to introduce you both to the realities of our situation," my father said. "Mr. Vance has been very persistent in his acquisition attempts." Vance smiled. "Your father has built an impressive company. We simply believe it could be managed more efficiently, more profitably." "Is that so?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Indeed, and with the European expansion underway, now seems like an opportune time to discuss consolidation." He looked between us. "Of course, your recent marriage changes the dynamic somewhat. Family unity and all that." I understood then why my father had invited him. This was a demonstration, a reminder of why the marriage had been necessary. "Family unity is important," Adrian agreed. "Which is why Isabelle and I have decided to take a more active role in the European expansion. Together." My father's eyes narrowed slightly. "That wasn't part of our arrangement." "Our arrangement was for a partnership," I said smoothly. "Adrian and I have discussed it, and we both feel our involvement would ensure success." Vance looked intrigued. "How modern. The next generation taking control." "Not taking control," Adrian corrected. "Contributing expertise. After all, Charles, you taught us both the importance of hands-on management." It was a masterful deflection, making it sound like respect while actually asserting authority. My father's jaw tightened, but he couldn't argue without looking weak in front of Vance. "We can discuss it later," he said finally. "Mr. Vance, I think we're done here." "Of course." Vance stood, shaking hands with my father. "Think about what I said. My offer remains open." After he left, my father turned to us, fury barely contained. "What was that?" he demanded. "That," Adrian said calmly, "was us protecting our investment. If Vance thinks we're divided, he'll push harder. Unity is our best defense. I don't need you to manage my defenses. With respect, Charles, you do. That's why you arranged this marriage in the first place." Adrian stood. "Now if you'll excuse us, Isabelle and I have work to do." We left before my father could respond. In the elevator, I let out a breath I'd been holding. "That was risky," I said. "Necessary. He needs to understand we're not just going to smile and nod anymore." Adrian loosened his tie slightly. "We're married now. We're supposed to be a team. He can't undermine that without looking hypocritical. He's going to fight us. Let him. We fought him before and won. We can do it again." The elevator doors opened, and we stepped out into the lobby, both heading to our respective offices to begin our separate workdays. But something had changed. We'd faced our first real test as a married couple, and we'd passed. At my office, Sarah greeted me with enthusiastic questions about the honeymoon. I showed her photos, told edited stories, played the role of happy newlywed. But my mind was elsewhere, already planning the next move. That evening, Adrian and I met for dinner at the penthouse. We both worked late, both were exhausted, both needed to debrief. "Your father called me 3 times today," Adrian said over takeout Thai food. "Wants to clarify our roles in the expansion. Translation, wants to reassert control." "Exactly." He set down his chopsticks. "I think we need to be strategic here. Push too hard, and he'll push back harder. But if we don't establish boundaries now, he'll walk all over us. So we need to pick our battles. And win the ones we pick." Adrian pulled out his tablet. "I've been thinking. The expansion has 3 phases. What if we propose taking lead on phase 2? It's substantial enough to matter, but not so critical that he'll refuse outright." I considered it. That could work. It would give us real responsibility without triggering a complete power struggle. And it would prove we're serious about partnership, not just coasting on the marriage. We spent the next hour strategizing, planning, building a proposal that balanced respect with assertion. This was us now, partners in business and in life, blurring the lines between them until it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. Later, getting ready for bed, I caught Adrian's reflection in the bathroom mirror. He was brushing his teeth, hair messy, wearing old sweatpants, looking nothing like the polished CEO the world saw. "What?" he asked, noticing my stare. "Nothing. Just thinking about how strange this is. How normal it's become." He rinsed his mouth. "Strange good or strange bad?" "Strange good, I think." In bed, we settled into our now familiar positions. The space between us had shrunk over the past 2 weeks. Not deliberately, just naturally. "Adrian," I said into the darkness. I'm glad it's you. That if I had to be in an arranged marriage, it's with someone who actually gets it." He was quiet for a moment. Then his hand found mine under the covers. "Me too," he said. We fell asleep like that, hands linked, partners in every sense that mattered. The honeymoon was over. The real marriage was beginning. And despite everything, despite the arrangement, the fathers, the manipulation, I was starting to think we might actually make it work. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but together. And maybe that was enough. Epilogue 1 year later. The annual shareholders meeting was always held in June. This year, I stood at the podium in front of 300 investors, board members, and business journalists, presenting the European expansion results with Adrian beside me. Phase 2 exceeded projections by 18%, I said, pulling up the next slide. Market penetration in Germany and France has been particularly strong, with customer retention rates at 92%. Adrian took over seamlessly. This success is directly attributable to the partnership model we implemented. Rather than imposing a one-size-fits-all approach, we adapted to regional preferences while maintaining brand consistency. We'd rehearsed this presentation a dozen times, but it wasn't performance anymore. It was collaboration. Real, genuine partnership. From his seat in the front row, my father watched with an expression I'd learned to read over the past year, grudging respect mixed with frustration that he no longer controlled every variable. The presentation ended to strong applause. Adrian and I fielded questions for 20 minutes. Technical inquiries about logistics, strategic questions about future expansion, a few pointed questions about our working relationship that we deflected with practiced ease. When it was over, Richard Vance approached us in the hallway. His takeover attempt had failed 6 months ago, but he'd remained a minority shareholder, watching and waiting. "Impressive presentation," he said. "You two have become quite the power couple." "We work well together," Adrian replied neutrally. "So it seems." Vance smiled. "I'll admit, when your marriage was announced, I thought it was a desperate move by Charles. A last-ditch effort to shore up his empire." He paused. "But you've actually created something sustainable. Unexpected." "Thank you," I said, unsure if it was a compliment or a threat. After he walked away, Adrian leaned close. "He's planning something." "I know. I saw him talking to Patterson from the board earlier." "We should." "Already on it. I'm having lunch with Patterson tomorrow." Adrian smiled. "God, I love that we think alike now." The shareholders' reception was held in the building's penthouse, with panoramic views of the city and enough champagne to float a small boat. Adrian and I worked the room separately, more effective that way, but I was always aware of where he was, who he was talking to. We developed that awareness over the past year, a kind of unspoken communication that came from genuine partnership. Helen found me by the windows. "You look happy," she observed. "I look professional," I corrected. "You can be both." She sipped her champagne. "How are things?" "Really? Good. Surprisingly good. And Adrian?" I glanced across the room where my husband was charming a group of European investors. He caught my eye and winked. "Also good," I admitted. Helen studied my face with that too perceptive gaze. "You're in love with him." I stopped. Was I? It's complicated. Love usually is. We're partners first. That was the agreement. Agreements can evolve, darling. Helen squeezed my hand. "Just don't be so afraid of complications that you miss what's right in front of you." Before I could respond, my father appeared. "Isabelle, a word." Helen excused herself tactfully. My father led me to a quieter corner. You've done well with the European expansion, he said. Coming from him, it was high praise. Thank you. I'm considering expanding your responsibilities. The Asian markets are opening up, and I think I'd like to discuss that with Adrian first, I interrupted. His expression tightened. This is a Whitmore Holdings decision, and I'm a Castellano now. Any major commitment affects both companies. I kept my voice even. We work as partners, remember? That was the whole point. For a moment, I thought he'd argue. Then he nodded slowly. Talk to your husband. We'll meet next week. It was a small victory, but victories over my father were always small. Incremental. Hard-won. That evening, Adrian and I walked home from the reception. We started doing that 6 months ago, leaving the car, taking the long way through the city, decompressing together. Your father offered you Asia, he said. You heard that. I was close enough. Also, Patterson told me. He thinks it's a good move. What do you think? Adrian was quiet for a moment. I think it depends on what you want. Asia is huge. It would mean more travel, more pressure, more time away from what you've built here. More time away from you, I said quietly. He stopped walking. Is that a factor now? We'd been dancing around this for months. The way our partnership had evolved into something deeper. The way I'd started looking forward to coming home to him. The way he'd started leaving work early to have dinner together. The way we'd stopped pretending there was still space between us in bed. Yes, I admitted. It's a factor. Adrian's expression softened. Isabelle, I know what we agreed. Partners first, everything else second. But somewhere in the last year, the lines got blurry. They did, he agreed. And I haven't been sure if that was okay. If you were okay with it. Are you? Am I okay with falling for my own wife? He smiled. Yeah, I'm very okay with it. My heart did something complicated in my chest. You're falling for me? I fell months ago. I've just been waiting to see if you'd catch up. I laughed, surprising myself. That's very presumptuous of you. Is it wrong? I thought about the past year. The strategy sessions that turned into late-night conversations. The business dinners that became real dates. The way he made coffee exactly how I liked it, and I knew which tie he'd choose for important meetings. The way we built something real from an arrangement that should have been impossible. No, I said. It's not wrong. Adrian stepped closer. So what do we do about it? We could acknowledge it. Make it official. We're already married. We're married on paper. I'm talking about being married for real. By choice, not arrangement. His smile was slow, genuine. Isabelle Castellano, are you proposing to me? Maybe. Is that ridiculous? Completely. He took my hands. But I like it anyway. So yes, I'll marry you. Again. For real this time. I kissed him right there on the sidewalk, with the city flowing around us like we were a stone in a stream. It wasn't our first kiss. We'd been married a year, but it was the first one that felt like a beginning instead of performance. When we pulled apart, Adrian was grinning. Should we tell our fathers? He asked. God, no. Let them think they're still pulling the strings. Devious. I love it. We walked the rest of the way home hand in hand, planning our real wedding. Something small, just us. Maybe back in Santorini where we'd first figured out how to be together. At the penthouse, Sarah had sent over files for tomorrow's meetings. Adrian had a stack of contracts to review. We both had work that couldn't wait. But we also had each other. And somehow, we'd learned to balance both. Asia, Adrian said, settling onto the couch with his laptop. Let's talk about it seriously. I sat beside him. You think I should take it? I think you should decide what you want, and then we'll figure out how to make it work. He pulled up a map on his screen. The time difference is brutal, but manageable. We could arrange trips to overlap, and video calls have gotten pretty good. You be okay with that? With me being gone weeks at a time? I'd hate it, he admitted. But I'd hate you resenting me for holding you back more. We're partners, Isabelle. That means supporting each other's ambitions, even when it's inconvenient. I kissed him again, softer this time. Have I mentioned that I love you? He looked surprised. Actually, no. That's the first time you've said it. Well, I do. Love you. His smile could have lit the city. I love you too. Even though you steal all the covers and have conference calls at 6 a.m. You snore and leave coffee cups everywhere. We're a disaster. We're perfect. We worked side by side until midnight, occasionally bouncing ideas off each other, sometimes just existing in comfortable silence. This was us now. Business partners, life partners, best friends who happened to be married. In bed, Adrian pulled me close, and I settled against his chest like I'd been doing for months. So, he said, we started as strangers, became partners, and now we're what? Everything, I said simply. We're everything. I like that. Through the windows, the city glittered like scattered diamonds. Somewhere out there, my father was probably plotting his next move. Vance was probably planning his next takeover attempt. 100 problems waited for tomorrow. But tonight, we had each other. And we'd built something neither of our fathers could have predicted. Not just a successful business alliance. Not just a convenient arrangement. But a real marriage. Chosen daily, fought for constantly, built on mutual respect and genuine love. Adrian, I said sleepily. Thank you for being worth the risk. His arms tightened around me. Thank you for taking it. I fell asleep thinking about weddings in Greece and morning coffee and partnership agreements that evolved into something beautiful. My father had arranged a marriage to save his empire. He'd gotten that, but he'd also given me something he never intended. A partner who saw me, challenged me, loved me for exactly who I was. The arranged marriage had been his idea. The real marriage was ours. And that made all the difference. 6 months later, the small chapel in Santorini was nothing like the elaborate ceremony at my father's estate. 20 people sat in simple wooden chairs. Helen, Sarah, Adrian's closest colleagues, a few friends who'd supported us through the chaos of the past 18 months. No orchestra, no 300 guests, no performance. Just us. I wore a simple white dress I'd bought myself. Adrian wore a suit but no tie. We'd written our own vows, real ones this time. Isabelle, Adrian said, holding my hands. The first time we got married, I promised partnership. Today, I'm promising more than that. I'm promising love, support, the kind of partnership that goes deeper than business, that survives whatever our fathers, or the world, throws at us. I choose you. Every day. By choice, not contract. My turn. Adrian, you asked me once what I wanted. At the time, I said autonomy. But what I really wanted, what I've always wanted, is to be seen. To be valued for who I am, not what I represent. You gave me that. You saw me when I was invisible to everyone else. So today I'm choosing you. Not because I have to. Because I want to. Because you're my partner in every sense that matters. The officiant, the same woman who'd married us in Greece during our honeymoon, smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Again, you may kiss your bride. For real this time. Adrian pulled me close, and we kissed while our small group of friends and family applauded. This was our real wedding day. The day we chose each other. And it was perfect. At the reception, a simple dinner at the villa, Helen raised her glass. To Isabelle and Adrian, she said, who proved that sometimes the best love stories start with the worst circumstances. May you continue to rewrite the rules and build something beautiful. To rewriting the rules, everyone echoed. Later, on the terrace overlooking the sea, Adrian and I stood watching the sunset. Think our fathers know about this? He asked. Probably. My father has spies everywhere. Are we going to hear about it? Definitely. I leaned against him. Do we care? Not even a little bit. We'd stopped caring what our fathers thought 6 months ago. Stopped letting their approval or disapproval dictate our choices. We'd taken control of our own story, and we were writing it exactly how we wanted. I love you, I said. I love you too. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in gold and crimson. We'd started this journey as pawns in someone else's game. We'd ended it as partners in our own. And that was the happiest ending I could have imagined. Not perfect, not easy, but ours. Completely, entirely, beautifully ours. The end.